Brandon Myers, Director of Region 51 Emergency Management.
Chairman, I asked for Brandon to come in and provide this update for the events that happened this last week concerning the rail car fire that occurred out at Bailey Yard. I had an opportunity to be out there on site with Brandon and saw a few things that kind of raised my eyebrow, some things that gave me pause as far as response. I would note that I am extremely pleased with our first responders, North Platte Fire, Emergency Management, the Nebraska State Patrol, North Platte PD, and our Sheriff's Office, and how they executed our plans for the county dealing with this emergency situation. I cannot say enough good things about the professionals that were out there responding to this. But overall, I think that we have some room for improvement, particularly when it comes to working with our partners at Bailey Yard. And so I asked Brandon to come in and provide us an update, because I have some questions personally, and I think that this is probably going to be the first of a few conversations.
Okay, sounds great. Brandon, we'll turn this over to you. Can you describe the events that occurred that day and some of the responses that you have in that regard?
Yeah, what I'll start with is what I handed you guys was just kind of our preliminary kind of rundown of timeline events, plus the ERG on the chemical. So it was not in a very populated area, thankfully, but we still had residents that were out in that area within even our evacuation area that we put out. The timeline that I've got is 12:04 on Thursday, September 14th, was our first 911 call of a rail car on fire. It was reported that there was hazardous materials in the area, but it was unknown at the beginning if that car had hazardous materials on it. And the caller reported no injuries. Same caller, rail car that's on fire is exploding. At 12:06, North Platte Fire was paged out, and they were told to meet a UP employee at Taft Building on Highway 30, and they'd be directed into where this was. We have reports that couldn't see because of the thick black smoke. At 12:07, a citizen had called in about large sonic boom and lots of smoke from the UP rail yard. By 12:09, North Platte 7, which is the battalion chief for North Platte on that day, had responded out there, was on scene, and had made the decision that coming in from the Taft Building area was not gonna be suffice for this, and told additional units that were responding they needed to go Front Street to North Front Road and come in off Birdwood there. That's where the best access was from.
Was that because of the direction of the wind too?
The direction of the wind and even just being able to get to the rail car from the direction they were first gonna come in. There was a lot more tracks to try and cross anyways, but the big was the direction of the wind. The wind was blowing north at that time. I know that requests were put out to close Highway 30 because of this smoke. When we talk about our evacuation of this area, this picture here shows from the fire to the edge of city limits, which is on Lakeview, is about 2.78 miles. Fire to Golden Spike, we were looking at 1.8 something miles in distance. So, this is a thermal image from that drone to show you how hot that rail car was. It's pretty hot.
It's 12. What you would call red hot.
Yeah.
So this container was on the lower level and another container
It was sitting on top. So
Which,
the lower level is the one that had the chemicals in it.
okay, what was in the upper?
That I wasn't quite sure, so I'm not gonna say, I heard a couple different things, but it wasn't what was our main concern, which was the, proic acid on the bottom.
Jerry,
Pardon, yes, sir.
I was with the special agency, upper one was a mixed load, and when they mix load, they don't specify each item in there. It was headed to Singapore.
Dwayne, Jerome, would you please come up, I had a request that we get this recorded. My concern is it would have been very useful information to know exactly what was in every container that was in the vicinity. But you say that in that type of a load, that's not possible, correct?
Well, they called Cheyenne and they called someplace else, and the results they got back was it was mixed load, and the manifest does not specify what's in those. When they're mixed, it was headed to Singapore with all of it. I think from talking to the agents.
But if it would have been something that was of a toxic nature, would that have been noted or not?
I don't know if it was a mixed load, it may not be.
How long did it take us to find out what was in the bottom container for chloric acid?
The official that I've got for timeline on here, 12:32 dispatch, it was reported dispatch that it was the perilic acid. But on dispatch timeline 2 at 12:33, they were also told that the train was full of batteries.
Okay, so there was some confusion on the.
So there was confusion, I know that, what North Platte Fire, and they were, the main attack team was on the south side of the tracks, where they actually had UP officials there, so they were kind of getting a little weather information. But even where, on the north side where we were flying the drone and where North Platte 7 was initially, that information was getting kind of confusing of which one are we actually dealing with.
That's one of my many concerns that I have, is it took nearly a half an hour for us to even find out what was burning. So you have a fire with smoke that's burning for 30 minutes to this point, and we don't know if we need to evacuate people. We ended up evacuating people out of their homes.
Yes.
And this is a serious situation that we have to deal with. And I think that's a shortcoming. And I'm not saying it's your fault or anybody in emergency management's fault, or first responders. And I know dispatch, I'm sure dispatch was pressuring what's in the containers, what is burning. But these are the types of questions that I have that I'd like to seek answers to.
As I say, between, first responders on scene, our dispatch, the EOC was opened up. Joanna, my assistant, was in there working with, North Platte Fire, trying to get information out, we even opened up 2 shelters, one at Salvation Army, one, in, Hershey at the Legion Hall.
This is your drone footage?
Yes, this is drone footage for me. So, I mean, yeah, it was a lot of coordination, a lot of work on trying to figure out what our boundaries were for an evacuation in a safe zone.
And
the
that goes to the number one question I have. How can we put a boundary or a zone when we don't know what's in that smoke?
When North Platte Fire was confident of what they were looking at, that's what they went with.
Okay.
That was that, perlalic acid.
Okay.
So, and from there, what they did is they went off the ERG, Emergency Response Guide. And, I even highlighted on the front page in yellow for a fire in a container like this. Minimum is half-mile evacuation area for this.
So I'm seeing in this drone footage to the left, is that the grass fire you're talking about?
That's the grass fire that they had to initially, work on before they could even determine and decide what they were gonna do for the rail car and fire.
And then the two trains that are lined up on the right side.
This
towards the end
is where the train car, the rail car's on fire,
Okay.
where the cursor is. They had to figure out how to get this car safely out of the way, that whole line.
What's the distance between those because that indicates a fairly large blast.
Yes. I'm not exactly sure on distance. But I do know the state fire marshal, about right where the cursor is, found one of the lids for one of the 55-gallon drums.
anything that requires placarding identifies its basic chemical characteristics and
Problem at this point, can't get close enough to see that placarding if there is any, and actually at this point, it was wrong.
the placard was
Yeah.
blown away.
If it wasn't blown off, it was consumed by fire because that metal was, the second container, we thought at first blew off of it, it was actually on top and had crushed the bottom because the bottom is melted. Container.
In my dealings with hazardous materials at my career, whenever we loaded anything that was labeled with any kind of hazardous material, there are multiple copies of that label that you pull, and one of them should be left with, clerks
Yeah.
that can log all that. One we gave to our driver, and one went in the back of the trailer. I understand it's a lot different with trains, but don't they have a similar,
They're supposed to, yes.
okay,
Well, I can't answer for them on that.
okay.
The only thing I can answer is, this was a line of cars being put back together to go out.
So the manifest may not
manifest-
have been built yet.
May not have been proper yet, I don't know.
So
But
that,
again, that's not an area I can really answer for.
so that leads to other questions that I have, which I don't know that you're the appropriate one to answer this, but it's my understanding that this car was listed as do not hump, and this stretch of cars were humped. And so we have 56 gallons roughly of perchloric acid. They were in a car that wasn't supposed to be humped, they were humped, and that's what really led, I mean, the investigative report from the FRA is gonna come out, we'll know for sure definitively.
The report we got was there was 50 drums, or 50 barrels of 55 gallons worth of this in there.
And that
Now,
car
was-
that car
was-
was humped at roughly 5:30.
So, was there leakage of the perchloric acid liquid?
That's a possibility, yeah. Whether it was,
You would assume, because perchloric acid, the only time it really becomes volatile, based on my research, is when it comes in contact with organic matter.
Yes.
So like the pallets that it was sitting. There had to have been some kind of a crack in that barrel that it was in, based on the
even
jar.
on the ERG, it says no wood, no cloths, no anything for cleanup. So,
Okay. Continue on, sir.
I do know, some of the concern, about when rave alerts went out. Dispatch put the very first rave alert on evacuations at 12:30 PM. So, 26 minutes after their first 911 call, a rave alert went out for the specific area, Splinter Road to North Front Road, Front Street, a mile north. That was the evacuation zone. That's what we were going off of with the ERG. What they kind of assumed was the chemical before they were able to confirm for sure. But they went a mile. ERG says half mile. They went a mile of evacuation to be safe. And that's a mile. The ERG basically says a mile all the way, or half mile all the way around. So they really stressed the point of, because the wind was blowing out of the north, we wanted a mile of that to the north.
It was blowing out of the south towards the north.
Yes.
Who made the report that that train, or that container, I'm guessing, was full of batteries?
That I'm not sure. Dispatch didn't even put it down in their log, just that they had a report that these were, the cars were full of batteries.
They had to have somebody go.
So someone called in, whether it was someone on the radio that was out there calling dispatch, saying, hey, this is what we got, or someone actually called into the 911 center.
I think conversation that we had while out on scene, I think we determined that there might have been a couple cars away that had batteries in it. But there was definitely confusion on what was actually burning
Yes.
at the time.
So, after we were able to make sure that we had people staffed at our evacuation location, the shelter locations, we had dispatch put another, rave alert out on, where our evacuation evacuation locations were. At 12:58, UP notified our dispatch center that they were going to start up running, trains again on the main line, because where this was not on or close to the main line. There's actually quite a bit of distance between it and the main line.
What would have happened if wind would have shifted though? Because if we had a real threat.
That
about
was,
wind
that was
shifts,
something that came later when we were talking with the weather service, that we were looking at a wind shift. Basically, the wind was gonna be coming out of north going south later the afternoon, evening hours. So we were already coming up with a plan, and that's where another radio alert eventually went out later that afternoon. 4 people, basically again, Splinter, or, not even Splinter Road, it was, what's that? Homestead to Front Road, south, all the way to A Street, for those people to be prepared to evacuate their homes if this fire continued and we did get that wind shift. So we had that going, because again, we were in contact a lot with the weather service. Well, Highway 30 was open by 5 o'clock, by 5:03. So that evacuation and everything by 5 o'clock was lifted. Because they were actually confident that we'd been seeing white smoke, so the fire was out, to where mainly it was just mostly steam from the water they're putting on. And the amount of chemical that they were even thinking during most of this time was burnt off a long time ago. And by 6 o'clock, we closed all of our shelters, because everybody was able to go home.
Brandon, question, during the incident,
Yes.
how were we monitoring the air quality?
That is something that North Platte Fire does.
Okay.
With their hazardous material, vehicle, their training and equipment they've got. They're able to do that, and they do that quite extensively on hazmat. Because it's not only a safety issue for them, it's a safety issue of what we're looking at that's going downwind, that could affect the public.
As far as our emergency management plans when dealing with hazardous material situations, did we execute how we needed to? Were the
Yes.
plans followed? Can the same be said for our partners at the UP?
I'm not sure, I don't know what their plans are.
Okay. Again, I appreciate this information, seeing the activity log for dispatch is very beneficial for me, because I did have some questions as far as the timeline that it took for us to get valuable pieces of information. I'm concerned about the distance, the length of time that it took, because I see it really wasn't even confirmed that there were 50 to 55 or 55 gallon barrels until 15:03. That's when North Platte Fire 7 advised dispatch that that's what it was. You know, you take a look at this situation, we're extremely lucky. Perchloric acid, it's nasty, and it can cause major health issues and even fatalities in certain instances, but we're lucky that we executed our plans and we got people evacuated in a timely manner as fast as we could once we realized what we were dealing with. But I also know what goes through that yard, and it's important that we do have things going through that yard, because the railroad, I mean, they ship a lot of things that keep our country moving, but perchloric acid is only one chemical that's moved. This could have easily been anhydrous or chlorine, and in which we're looking at a completely different type of situation. And when you look at this individually, anecdotally, it's easy for us to say, oh, this was just a fire of a car. We'll deal with it, but we don't have that luxury. In the past 2 weeks, we've had major reports coming out that really raise concern from my standpoint, and I hope from you, my colleagues as well. We had a report from the FRA come out about over twice the average deficiency nationwide on UP lines for rolling stock. We've had a report just come out that detailed all the discrepancies that led up to the Gothenburg derailment. I think we owe it to the citizens of Lincoln County and really to the state to push in on this a little bit and get some answers, because we need to make sure that this is mitigated moving forward. As the chief emergency management officers for Lincoln County, that's our responsibility to the taxpayers and to the citizens of Lincoln County. And so I asked that we ask some tough questions. We find out that what steps are being taken by the Union Pacific to mitigate this moving forward. Because like I said, this could have easily been a different type of situation. The wind, we were blessed to have the wind coming out of the south.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we were looking at normal wind patterns, we could have easily been evacuating parts of North Platte, very easily. So that's my request, is that we invite stakeholders from different departments, whether it be the general manager, the superintendents. I think that we probably need to have some employee representatives in. I'd be interested in getting the FRA in here and hearing from them, as well as our first responder team. And how do we move forward together to address these concerns and make sure that our plans are in cohesion? Because I'm hearing roundabout ways from constituents that work out at the railroad that their emergency management plans weren't followed. Sirens were supposed to go off in Bailey Yard whenever there was a toxic burn, and that didn't happen. We had the UP asking to have the main line traffic restored. We had an active situation with a fire that easily could have had a wind shift and put Lincoln County residents that work out there in harm's way. So that would be my ask, Mr. Chairman, is that.
How do we proceed on it? First off, we should be very thankful that no one was hurt or harmed, both UP employees and residents of Lincoln County. We're very thankful for that. We might have just been lucky. Will we be next time? Who knows? So we have to, for the sake of the safety and security of everyone in this county, that we take some action. And I would ask for your guidance as to how we proceed with that. Do we get the stakeholders together and we see what we can determine as a better response from all people involved?
I think so, yes, because, there was some balls dropped, lack of communication in certain things and different directions going in some aspects of this, where everybody should be going in the same direction, so.
I think the policy of not knowing what mixed loads are is very dangerous.
To me, that sounds,
They may not be dangerous when they're being transported, but when they turn into flames from another source, the smoke off of them can be very toxic, and probably was. That nasty black smoke, we don't know if that was coming from Madison or if it was coming from the second load. We had no idea what was in there, nor did anybody around there.
yeah,
It was information that appeared to me to be impossible to find.
and that just strikes me as being very poor policy.
Very concerning, considering if it would have been semis on the interstate or on our state highway system or on our county roads, there's a lot of rules and regulations that surround that entity, so you have to wonder why isn't it the same for the rail?
Mr. Chairman, would
Yes,
be
sir.
my recommendation that I think this board is the proper board to conduct it. Thank you as chairman, how you choose to do that is up to you, what you do up to a committee. But it's a governmental body that, I think that's absolutely what should start. And I agree with everything that's been said.
Okay, with that in mind, would you and Commissioner Burns like to lead up that investigation?
I'd love to.
I would be more than happy to.
Let's have you proceed and bring information to us, and if we need to have information presented in front of this board in future meetings, let's do so.
Okay. We'll work with Brandon and coordinate that.
Thank you very much for all the work that you did in that, and Sheriff, thank you very much for your work and on those, thank yous to the fire department and other first responders as well.
And on the parting, this is just one of the, technology pieces that we get from the National Weather Service on a hazardous incident. They'll give us, we can give them all sorts of information, and they'll give us what that cloud movement is gonna look like.
I should have included the weather service in my, my list of entities to give kudos to earlier. They were invaluable in the information they were providing real time, so. What level it is, so it's from, so, and if the plume's going north, and then, orange is level 2, yellow is level 1. So, it didn't take very far for it to get, before it became just a mild health irritant.
It dissipated.
It dissipated quickly, and that's what, when it hits the air, that's what we want. If we want it to hit the air and dissipate quickly, and that's what it did, so.
Again, we're lucky with this particular chemical that was the case.
I do know I have a phone call from friends that live, north of that area, and their first indication was they could taste it in the air.
Yeah.
And that's a concern.
Okay. Thank you very much for the, information and the update.
Yep.
And we'll look forward to hearing more after Commissioner Hughley runs, digging into this a little deeper. Thank you very much. Okay, Deputy County Attorney, is there a need for a closed session?
No.
Good news.
All my
Okay.
calls have been handled.
Okay, next item is hear concerns from elected officials, department heads, or their representatives. Anything new from the road department?
Not at this time.